100-litre still, locally sourced juniper berries, our very own small batch distillery. And it all fits in the garage.
I said I wanted some home gym equipment, Craig.
Oh.
Trouble hearing? Save up to €500 on selected hearing aids at Specsavers Audiologists. Offer ends 28th of February 2019. Book a free hearing check today.
Well, are you sure you can't be tempted to keep it? I've got 100 bottles of tonic water on the way.
With over 1,200 car dealerships and 1 million car ads viewed every day, it's no wonder Done Deal has more car buyers and sellers than any other website in Ireland. Find your next make and model on Done Deal. Discover and drive.
Ciao, I am Manuela Greco from Scavolini Kitchens, Italy's most loved design kitchen, bathrooms and living company. The Italian sense of beauty, quality and meticulous attention to detail can be seen in the Scavolini collection. We are dedicated to bringing Italian style to Ireland.
Scavolini showrooms in Dublin at Vision Creative Studios beside Fashion City Ballymount. Exit 10 on the M50. For more, visit vitaitaliana.ie.
Arrivederci.
This week at M&S, romance is quite literally blossoming. 12 stunning, short-stemmed, beautifully fresh roses are at the blooming marvellous price of just €7.50 in store, while stocks last subject to availability.
The Sunday Papers on Off the Ball.
Good afternoon, you're very welcome to the Sunday Paper Review this afternoon on Off the Ball. I'm joined this afternoon by journalist and broadcaster Marie Crowe. How are you doing, Marie?
I'm great, thank you very much.
And also Jack Anderson, Director of Sports Law at Melbourne Law School, is with us. We have flown you over specifically for this Sunday's paper review. You landed this morning, you're going home tomorrow?
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So just a flying visit, just specifically for you.
But no, what have you been in town for? How long are you home for?
So just home for a week. We had a major sports law conference on Friday, organised by the Sports Law Bar of Ireland. So it was, discussed various sports law issues, some of which come up today as well. So it was a good day, and we were talking about the regulation of MMA, which is a hot topic in Ireland at the minute. And it was a good day.
Very good. So we'll get right into the back pages anyway, and naturally it is Ireland's win against Scotland yesterday that pretty much dominates things. The Sunday Times say, back in the groove. Rory Besta says, it was hard, but we took a step forward. Picture of a smiling Jacob Stockdale bursting through to score. Ireland shrug off England loss to beat Scotland 22-13 at Murrayfield. Wasn't the prettiest game, though, I think everyone would probably say. The Sunday Independent probably captures the mood of the game a little bit better. Ireland muscle away to victory. Joey Carberry makes a break on his way to setting up Ireland's crucial third try, scored by Keith Earls. Brendan Fanning starts his piece by saying, what started with a bang at Murrayfield yesterday with Scotland coming out of the blocks from the first whistle turned into a long sequence of grunts where Ireland always had enough to get back into the winners' enclosure. And also then down towards the bottom of the page, Kerry's Sean O'Shea kicking a point against Dublin last night in their great 118-214 win. Brilliant game of football. Kingdom Edge thrilling finale to lay down early marker. Kerry are back is the general consensus on the 9th of February, but we'll get to that later on. Jacob Stockdale also on the back page in the Mail on Sunday, celebrating his try yesterday. Roaring back, Ireland dig deep in Edinburgh to reignite Six Nations campaign, but Sexton concussion is a big concern. Sexton went off yesterday, failed a HIA test midway through the first half, which saw Joey Carberry coming on and have a great game at out half. Carberry is the picture on the back page of the Sunday World. Carberry ghosts past Scotland to set up Earls for crucial try. It's Joey the Slip. Ireland's Hall of Fame out-half Ronan O'Gara labelled Joey Carberry a world beater as Joe Schmidt's side got back on track in the Six Nations in Edinburgh. And also their fighting talk from guard. Pep Guardiola believes today's clash against Chelsea will prove whether Man City are back on track in this title race or not. Man City and Chelsea is our live game today this afternoon at 4 o'clock. Only a small little picture of the Irish team yesterday. Jacob Stockdale scoring his try on the back page of the Sun. Headstrong. Joey Carberry kept his head after Johnny Sexton suffered a knock to his in Murrayfield yesterday. But they lead with the pretty horrific abuse. Football was dragged into the gutter yesterday as moronic fans shamed their club. Two sick yobs faced life bans from Southampton for mocking the death of Emiliano Sala with vile aeroplane gestures during their defeat to Cardiff. Their headline says, shame, vile plane taunt, sick heart attack tweet, twisted fans disgrace football. On the back page of The Star on Sunday, Best men, Rory praises his tartan tormentors after Ireland's win yesterday, and the picture of Conor Murray diving in for the opening try of the game at Murrayfield yesterday. And finally, with the Sunday Mirror, Genie and Tonic, Liverpool 3, Bournemouth 0. Midfielder climbs off sickbed to take top again. That was Genie Wijnaldum's great goal yesterday. Beautiful lob to put Liverpool, I think it was 2-0 in front at the time, and their 3-0 win against Bournemouth, which sent them back to the top of the table. Joey Carberry at the top of the page, he's Scott the lot. Joey Carberry went from 0 to hero to get Ireland over the line at Murrayfield, but there are fears for star number 10, Johnny Sexton, and also Show Me De Money. David De Gea is refusing to budge on his £350,000 a week wage demands in his contract standoff with Manchester United. So guys, we'll get straight into the action. I suppose we'll start just with the debrief of what the papers are saying really about yesterday's win for Ireland against Scotland. One piece I found quite interesting. I think it probably summed up the kind of game it was. Stephen Jones probably isn't the most popular rugby writer in certainly to Irish fans, but I get the impression yesterday he was so fed up with what he saw at Murrayfield yesterday. The first half really of his match report is just, it's almost like a list of things he now hates about modern rugby. And he does eventually get into a debrief, and it's actually a fair enough debrief, I think, of the skills that were wrong yesterday, and a few things that happened well, but just some of the things. Scotland's aspirations to greatness or even goodness, perhaps even to win the Six Nations title, died a horrible death in yesterday. All those hopes, springing from a lively first half performance, were extinguished by an Irish team who themselves were in no great shakes but know how to win. Going on further then, the second half, with respect, showed how awful rugby can sometimes be. If you add the interminable length of time these days it takes to form a scrum or a line-out, the endless debates directed at the referee, the pitch invasion celebrations by replacements when play is going on, and all the other rubbish that now intrudes on what is normally a great sport, no wonder it sometimes grinds to a halt. Whatever momentum remains in the final quarter will evaporate as up to 16 replacements arrive. The trendies call these benchmen finishers. Quite right. Any semblance of a spectacle and coherence are finished when they arrive. I don't think he enjoyed yesterday at Murrayfield.
There was actually kind of a marked difference. If you like the match reports that were written by Irish journalists, and then the match reports that appeared in the paper, maybe from journalists that weren't Irish, were quite different. Like there was a lot of relief in the analysis, and I think Neil Francis called it a performance of substance. And then, like the other match reports were saying, Ireland were there for the taking, they were ordinary. It was very much focused on the negative, whereas the Irish slants were trying to focus, I think, on the positives and get things back on track. After the defeat to England, there was a huge amount of focus as well on Joey Carberry and his performance. And Johnny Sexton and the HIA featured an awful lot as well across all the pages.
Mm-hmm. One intro I did like as well was of Hugh Farrelly, and it's probably just touching back to the overreaction of the last week and how it fed into yesterday's performance. It was quite good though. I'll just read it out here. Much more like it and much needed, and now can everyone please, for the love of Jim Staples, calm the hell down. Some of the hysteria that greeted Ireland's opening Six Nations loss was off the charts, as noted last week. Getting an English stuffing did not suddenly turn Ireland into turkeys on a slow roast to Japan, and neither should this victory over Scotland send IRFU serfs scurrying for the Silvo. We are a ways off trophy polish yet. The Six Nations title is a long shot, but that's okay in a World Cup year, and our Far East aspirations are still a work in progress, one that demands a perspective abandoned spectacularly in the build-up to this Murrayfield clash. One of the major downsides to Irish rugby's explosion in popularity has been the cacophony of white noise with it, between mainstream media and its degenerate social cousin. Everyone now has an opinion. Lads who did not know if the ball was stuffed or pumped 10 years ago are now excreting knee-jerk dogmatism like a wonky bottle of HP brown sauce.
Yeah, that's a good
I think that actually sums it up very well.
That's a good piece.
I think it just sums up the performance yesterday, the performance last week, and the 7 days in between very, very well.
Yeah, because even from the England game, and England played well, that was the bottom line, but even the Monday afterwards, suddenly Ireland were being described as caveman rugby, and everything that we had done well, we were suddenly doing badly, and even the whole system and stuff like that. But the reaction to this victory over Scotland, it almost started immediately afterwards in the TV studios, where people like Ronan O'Gara and Shane Jennings were saying, good day, all the basics are right, scrum, line out, we got away with it, tough place to go to, and let's move on. And then you had someone like Matt Williams who was saying, well, look at our attack. You know, some of our tries were based on mistakes as well. And I think probably one of the better pieces then is Neil Francis's piece, which is a quite solid piece, basically saying what Ronan O'Gara and Shane Jennings has said. Look, you know, if you consider what happened against England, you know, the weak recovery was a good one, and we move on from this. We kind of have a bit of a break now. We have the Italy match, and we saw how Wales dealt with that yesterday. And then you have two big matches then, Wales and France as well. And I think all of the papers are kind of saying as well that the Six Nations this time is important, but really there is another thing coming later in September and October, which is more important still, and that's where we're looking at.
I think that Rory Best's quotes after the game were pretty bang on. He just said, we'd ideally like to play better and play with a bit more fluidity than we did today. And I think that kind of sums it up, really. It was grand. Like, no one's going to get too excited. There isn't going to be any hysteria after anything yesterday. And they're just going to get on with it now for the rest of the championship.
And on that back page on the Sunday Times as well, actually, I meant to say it a couple of minutes ago, there's the picture of Rory Best lifting the centenary quatch, which they won yesterday against Scotland. And I think it just sums up the mood. I remember watching it on TV yesterday. I've never seen someone look so bored lifting a piece of silverware in my life.
Peter O'Reilly actually
said... He picked it up and literally went...
Peter O'Reilly said he looked suitably sheepish as he as he received it.
And you can see the picture there. He's...
What am I supposed to do with this now?
Right,
It was job done, but there was positives. There was positive with Carberry. I thought mentally he was very tough. You know, he threw the intercept pass, but then really did well in the second half, which is a huge positive as well. Obviously, there are talking points with the Stuart Hogg injury, and equally with the Johnny Sexton injury as well, which Marie has kind of highlighted.
Yeah, I thought it was quite a worrying intro in one of the pieces. Joe Schmidt hopes Johnny Sexton will shake off a head injury in time for Ireland's trip to Italy. Yeah, and it went on to say that the 33-year-old failed a head injury, and that Joe Schmidt later downplayed the extent of Sexton's injury, which I thought was quite of a worrying theme to that piece when you think of head injuries and how much we're talking about them. And
it was a strange one because it was very hard to find where it happened. I think Schmidt said after the game he thinks he got a stamp, and he actually thinks it was from one of their own players that it happened, maybe just in a ruck or something. But we couldn't really see it at any stage in the game.
Yeah,
he did take a lot of big hits.
Oh no, he did.
Until then,
and that is a point that I think Smith has highlighted as well in his quotes afterwards about those. Not saying that they were late. Some of them, were clearly late. But he's saying, this is clearly a tactic now, and what can we do with regard to Johnny Sexton? But also, with the, I think it was the Stockdale try, he's an incredibly brave player, Johnny Sexton. I mean, the whole thing of delaying the pass until the last minute and then
making himself a sitting duck.
Oh, absolutely. I did a piece for the Examiner during the week on concussion in NFL and talking about great quarterbacks and how they get hit late and sacked. I mean, he's like that. But he is an incredibly brave player. But with player welfare, etc., comes the need to protect them as well. And and it's not directly linked in any way, but there's an interesting piece in the Irish Mail on Sunday today about motor neuron disease and possible link to contact sport. This is coming in the context of the Doddy Weir Foundation. Doddy Weir, the ex-Scotland international, but it's and the Mail on Sunday has been quite campaigned on this issue, concussion and contact sports, football, rugby, etc. But the one point they're making, and it's a point made by Ian Herbert in his piece, he just talks about a survey that says the risks of developing motor neuron disease are 8 times higher for those who receive repeated blows to the head and spine while playing sport at an elite level. Now, how the control factors involved, how many people are involved in that, we're not quite sure in terms of the survey, but there's more and more going into this, research into this, and it's a worrying issue, but there's no doubt World Rugby has been extremely aware of it.
But I think when you hear language like shake off and downplay and head injuries all together, like that's straight away a red flag and a real worry when you hear those things.
Yeah, it really is. And I was actually interested to see as well at the start of that, they just kind of mentioned, where was it? This is the most definitive investigation of its kind ever undertaken into the case of fatal degenerative disease, which has afflicted rugby unions Doddy Weir and Hughes van der Westhuizen and football's Fernando Rickson, Stephen Darby and Lenny John Rose has discounted the idea that blows to the head sustained in amateur or park sport can be a cause, but repeated blows sustained at a high technical level.
Yeah, yeah, and that's an interesting... and
that's where the trouble really arises.
This is the trouble, and we've got this kind of overall link between what they call CTE, which is a degenerative brain disease, and playing contact sports such as NFL. I think the difference is that, for years, for decades, big sports like the NFL denied it, that there was any link. One thing you can say, in fairness to World Rugby, they are not denying that there are issues and that they're getting involved with rule changes and the tackle line and all this. And that's why it's quite important. Sometimes you hear commentators saying, oh, the game has gone soft and the way they referee the tackles, etc. There's soft and there's safe. And there's the future of the sport. And I think that's why we need to kind of promote this safety issue as much as we can.
Yeah, and it even goes, just off the top of my head, even from the last week, I remember, I can't remember his first name, an Australian international, Fainga. There was a video doing the rounds of him talking about how at his brother's, he has had serious issues with head injuries and concussion.
Yeah.
He had to be held up at the altar at his brother's wedding.
Yeah.
From the sheer dizziness and... feeling faint.
Yeah.
And when you see things like that, when you hear a player talking about that, you go, okay, on what level has this game possibly gone soft?
Yeah, exactly. And it's just that we need to be kind of, they say, paternalistic. Players want to play on. And particularly when you're in the middle of a tournament like this, when you're in an important year for Irish rugby, they want to play on, and they want to be available at all times. But so you have to have your protocols in place to deal with this. So it's a big issue.
I'm sure they don't like us talking about it either. Like, they don't like us talking about themselves, like individual, personal, they don't want their names in the spotlight as having consecutive concussions or having head injuries regularly as well.
Yeah, and as I think Liam Hayes is actually writing about it in that sidebar.
Yeah.
On that side of the page in the Daily Mail, and he's saying that, like, I remember last year when everyone was constantly asking Johnny Sexton about head injury after head injury. Are you always getting concussed? Are you going to retire early? How's this going to affect you? And he really got fed up about it and started saying, look, I haven't been concussed half as many times as people think, etc., etc. And he's just kind of saying, the fact that it's come up again yesterday, this is still an area of concern.
Yeah, and I suppose it's easie to kind of diagnose things and to make judgments when you're sitting on the couch watching the television. But like, if you fail at HIA, you fail at HIA. Like, there's a problem there, and it's impossible not to be worried about sports stars when you see them in any kind of a position where they look like they're getting hurt.
Yeah, and it's an important. It puts a lot of focus too on the doctors and physicians who work within sport as well, because and we've seen it from other sports like in the NFL, where sometimes, and I'm not saying it happens over this side of the water, but sometimes it's happening in the NFL where the doctor becomes part of the team, and they sees the players as teammates and as friends, and it causes a kind of a conflict of interest as well. So the need for independent review of this is hugely important. And again, that is the case in World Rugby. But it's a general point about how physical the game has become.
And it's not just confined to rugby either, because he mentions, is it Ryan McHugh there in Liam Hayes and the situation that he was in where he had to take a break from the game, but like he's not going to stop playing. Like, they still want to play. I had a brother-in-law who was hit with a hurley, and he was very lucky that he actually survived. He played for Clare, Jim McMahon, and he just got a hurley through the helmet, and he was lucky that his sister was a doctor and she managed to spot the symptoms, but he had to learn to speak again. Former Clare hurler who had 4 young children, couldn't say their names when he eventually came out of an induced coma. So like, it's great to have these conversations, because at least no matter what, people are getting educated on it, and that it is an issue, not just in rugby but other sports as well. And
and even in hurling, they are clamping down at this year. I do remember reading the week before the National League started that contact with the head, accidental or otherwise, is going to be punished severely. And we had it on the opening weekend where Tony Kelly was red carded in that game against Clare. There wasn't much in it, but he connected. I think was it Paddy Maher's head he connected with.
Yeah.
He was red carded. A lot of people were using this the game's gone soft line, and you know it's so hard. It's something we've discussed even on this pay-per-view loads of times as well before, that there's probably going to have to be a long period of harsh calls and a long period of frustration.
And I don't think you can ever be too careful
to change the culture of the way these tackles are happening.
Because like even with Diarmuid McMahon, it was a club game, and it was just Stray Hurley just happened to get him in the exact spot at his left ear where he just managed to, or he just collapsed to the ground and he wasn't able to get back up again. But he did try to get back up again and he wanted to keep playing. And he had no idea, and the people around him had no idea, because there was just no education on that there might be a problem here. And he was just blessed that his sister was a doctor and happened to be there.
And it has. There was a little bit of a backlash from some within hurling about this new edict from the referees, but you can see where the GAA is coming from on this, you know, and actually. Sometimes with helmet...
Legally, I would imagine, as well?
Oh, yeah. I mean, with helmet sports as well, sometimes there's a tendency, you know, I'm covered by the helmet, you know, I'll be okay, you've seen it there. But actually, the force of that impact as well can make things worse. So it's just, you know, I think it was a very wise move by the GAA on this. It may take a little while to settle between contact that is kind of accidental and incidental than contact which is deliberate and intentional. But if you're erring on the side of caution, from the world of sport, you can see the view is you should err on the side of caution.
Because it's better to do it and implement it before something happens. Because it's when something happens and then you try and react afterwards that there's trouble. But also like rugby players, like GAA players are getting stronger, fitter, faster all the time. Like, you know, we're getting more sports science involved in the game. Like the programs are coming in younger, so that when they are older, they are much stronger. So it's a good time to do it before something does happen.
Yeah, moving on, just a very small bit. The man who came on for Johnny Sexton yesterday, Joey Carberry, he's one of the Irish players that's getting a lot of praise in the papers. And I have found it interesting in the last while, as much as the Irish media are absolutely loving the potential and what we've seen of Joey Carberry so far, it's the UK media that are really going in behind him as well. They're absolutely loving him. Like I was reading Stuart Barnes here this afternoon. There's life after Johnny Sexton. The Irish pivot and World Player of the Year was unceremoniously ejected from proceedings on 24 minutes. The moment many in Ireland were dreading, but maybe the one for which Joe Schmidt had been waiting. Yeah, I mean, you know, I said it earlier, mentally he was so strong because when he came on, you know, he threw the bad pass, but he really settled into it. It was interesting as well, and it's mentioned in the English papers as well. They say it's the Irish system at work as well. He's playing games regularly for Munster, and so that's the strength of it as well. And I mean, you know, we said it before, but this Six Nations, you know, the way games are coming, it's going to be the same in the World Cup. You know, Joey Carberry is going to be a big feature of it, and we need it.
And it's going to be so attritional that to have somebody that we know can perform at that level.
Absolutely, and that's a big lesson from previous World Cups. For
and
us.
Also as well, like just from a sheer journalism point of view as well, it's great to have that new story, you know, to have somebody to focus on, to look at him, to kind of delve into his background, to explore what he's good at, you know, all the where he's come from, where he's going as well. So it's nice, you know, to have somebody new coming along to talk about.
Absolutely. There is one piece as well before we move away from rugby. There was one piece that, as he came in today, I had read it this morning. Jack, when you came in, you mentioned it to me. Marie, when you came in, you mentioned it as well. And it's in the Mail on Sunday, a piece by Nick Simon. Tracked down in Samoa. Here are the witch doctors who rebuilt Manu. It's about Manu Tuolangi, the English centre, who was outstanding last week against Ireland. I'll just hold up the page there. He was outstanding against Ireland. It was his first Six Nations start in 6 years. A player of enormous potential, but who has been savaged by injury over the last few years. And what Nick Simon has done here, he has gone to Samoa and he has spoken to this faith healer, this witch doctor to the Western world, who Manu Tuolangi spent time with last year to try and, you know, get his health back together again, and, you know, alternative medicine to the injuries he's had for the last few years. But the intro is just fantastic. I think it sets the scene so beautifully. It's An hour's boat trip from the Tulangi residence on the Samoan island of Upola lives a 56-year-old widow in the village of Alafua. Her small wooden hut at the end of a dirt track is surrounded by lush banana plantations and flowering breadfruit trees. It's almost 10,000 miles away from Leicester, but this is where Manu Tulangi ended up in his quest to overcome his demons. It's just such a quirky piece.
Yeah, like I think I described it as almost clickbait in the paper. It was like the minute I saw it, I was like, witch doctor, Manu Tulangi.
The headline jumped out.
Yeah, I need to read this now. I need to know what it's about. But,
and in fairness, the content of it lived up to the headline, I thought as well. It was really interesting.
It was great because I didn't actually, when I saw it, I didn't expect him to have gone there, to actually have gone on the boat. I thought he was just going to get a bit of hearsay or, interviews with people that maybe had...
Ordered by his mother to go there.
Yeah, it was really good. Now, obviously, it's a little bit, bonkers, I suppose, is one way of putting it.
Not you believe in the science of this medicine. It's still a really interesting story.
But it paints a great picture, and, she mentions that... there was kind of some demons following him around, and there was, these demons were women who thought that they owned him, and she needed to speak to these demons or these spirits and tell them to leave him alone, and that seemed to have worked. So if only everything was easy as that. But I think he's such an interesting character anyway. We've it feels like he's way older than 27, like that when he arrived on the scene back in 2010 and 11 that he was so young. So we kind of watched him mature and grow up over the last number of years, and he definitely had an awful lot of maturing and growing up to do, but he seems to have done it now. But it's like it's nearly almost like he's a different person than that guy who was doing all the crazy stuff back in the days of, jumping off boats and causing scenes at Downing Street.
Yeah.
But it's a really interesting piece because because Nick Simon had actually put an awful lot of effort in to get the story and to I suppose kind of think outside the box. Like, he didn't just analyse his play; he went for something really different, and it's good.
Yeah, it's something we would have seen in the past as well. I'm just. It just triggered in my head Waisaki Naholo, the All Black winger. Yeah. It's something he had done before. He broke his leg before the 2015 World Cup and went back to Fiji to have this kind of faith healing treatment and whether it worked or not.
Because it makes a kind of a difference. Sometimes you get the rehab stories where the athlete says that it's very lonely and I was on the treadmill, and then you get this, you get everything from coconut oil to all sorts of things,
And there's actually kind of another layer to it as well. Like, he spoke to a guy that used to live with him, and it details just how low he was feeling when he was injured, and he was trying to get back, and he was trying to get back his form as well. So I thought that was interesting that his spirits were so low as well as being injured, that he was just kind of struggling to cope with it. So it was interesting to hear that side of how he was dealing with things as well as the going to the witch doctor.
Yeah, and recently enough I read, I don't know, are you familiar with Ben Ryan? He would have been the Fiji Sevens head coach that won the Olympic gold medal with them. And he's brought out a book in the last year called Sevens Heaven. It's just about his kind of journey with Fiji and how he ended up there. And it's an absolutely brilliant book. But there are a few stories quite like this in it, where at times he's kind of tearing his hair out at their reluctance towards traditional medicine and things like that. There was like, tragically, even there was one of the players he coached, his wife was suffering from breast cancer, and they were shunning all the traditional medicine, and this faith healer was going to cure her, and ultimately she died, and it was it's absolutely tragic. And he's eventually, after begging and begging, trying to get him to use traditional medicine, he just had to accept that this is the way they do it, this is the way they live their lives, and
it's their culture.
It's their culture. And there was another player who was suffering from diabetes, and he was using these faith healers and these witch doctors, trying to figure out why is this not working. And it was only when Ben Ryan convinced him, let's combine the actual medicine with this as well. And suddenly it worked. But in their heads, the faith healing has worked. Their medicine has worked. This stuff is extra as well. It's a fascinating book, though. And
it was kind of an underrated book.
I loved it.
Yeah. I thought it was a really interesting book. From not just from the sports point of view, but from all that cultural point of view as well.
I did see the mini doc. He did a little mini doc as well on his time there as well, which was great. But the thing about this as well, though, it's kind of like everything. If Tuilagi has another great game now today, like anyone that's injured will be like, right, how do we get over to this witch doctor to to get myself sorted. It's like the way the teams go, if somebody runs up a hill at 6 o'clock in the morning, then everyone's running up the hill at 6 o'clock in the morning. So I'd say watch that space now to see what happens.
Right, plenty more pieces to get through. We are going to take a quick break though. We'll be back in a few minutes.
Join the conversation. Text us on 53106. Texts cost 30 cents.
It's time to trade up to a new Peugeot at Gowan Motors Navan Road. Right now, selected Peugeots come with Peugeot Advantage. That means Peugeot ads, flexible payment options, 5-year warranty, and up to €750 deposit contribution or up to €4,000 scrappage allowance. Available now at Gowan Motors Navan Road. Terms and conditions apply.
Some things just work better when they're put together, like
tea and toast.
Good one, sunshine and sunnies.
Ah, bring it on. And of course, there's Murray and Sexton.
A perfect partnership.
Here's another. Bank of Ireland and Aer Lingus. We've teamed up to bring you Air Credit Card, so you can say hello to some pretty smart travel rewards.
Now that definitely works. Buy smart, fly smart with Air Credit Card and let the adventures begin.
Search Air Credit Card to find out more.
Rome and pizza, that's another one. Air Credit Card is brought to you by Bank of Ireland in partnership with Aer Lingus. Over 18s only. Lending criteria, terms and conditions apply. Subject to a monthly fee of €7.99. Bank of Ireland is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
Buying a house shouldn't be all about red tape. It should be about rolling out the red carpet. My Sherry Fits is an online platform that allows you to make offers, see other offers, contact your agent and book viewings. All online, anytime you like. It's an entirely new way to buy a home, built on everything we've always believed in. Find out more at mysherryfits.ie. Sherry Fitzgerald. It's not just about property, it's about people.
At Beacon Hospital, we fix broken hearts. We provide complete cardiac care, from our rapid access cardiology clinic to routine procedures and complex open heart surgeries. 1 in 3 Irish people die of heart disease. So if you're worried about your heart health, get checked and protect yourself from a broken heart. This is modern medicine. This is Beacon Hospital. Visit beaconhospital.ie. GP referral required.
The big brand event continues at Curry's PC World with brilliant trade-in offers on Ireland's largest range of laptops. Get at least €50 off big name brands like HP, Microsoft, Lenovo or Dell when you trade in a qualifying laptop. So trade in and save at the big brand event. At Curry's PC World, we help you get it right. T's and C's apply. Offer valid in store only.
Okay guys, welcome to our Q1 AGM Planning Quarterly Review Central meeting. This year, we're really going to be getting our ducks in a row, picking that low-hanging fruit and running our best people up the flagpole. Right, now let's square that circle, put the record on and see who dances. Any questions?
Business can be complicated, but travel doesn't have to be. With My Taxi Business, you can download receipts and manage multiple bookings online. Make the smarter choice at mytaxi.com.
Dave loves his sleep. Not that he's getting much. But because at Energia, we power all the streetlights in Ireland, we're the power behind Dave's latest night drive that's helping little Amy nod off. Finally. And because we also power Dave's home, we're the power behind the warm welcome from his electric blanket when he gets back. If he gets back. Energia, the power behind your power.
Employers. The deadline for filing your 2018 P35 is February 15th. As employers now report employees' pay and deductions in real time, 2018 is the final year for which a P35 is required. Save time by visiting revenue.ie and filing through Ross. Need help? Call our helpline on 01 738 3638. Avoid penalties and the risk of a possible tax audit. Remember, the P35 deadline is February 15th.
Today is the perfect time for starting. Starting to think about things, like looking after yourself. And starting something you've been putting off, your health insurance. For less than €10 a week, Leia Healthcare's Assure Protect scheme offers great cover with benefits including heart screening, unlimited phone access to GPs and nurses, and a session with a qualified health coach. So start now by talking to one of our experts on 1890 700 890, because it's good to live. Leia Healthcare, looking after you always.
Insurance provided by Ellipse Insurance Limited, trading as Leia Healthcare. Leia Healthcare Limited, trading as Leia Healthcare and Leia Life, is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland. Price and benefits for one adult over the age of 18 on Assure Protect.
What is it that drives you? If it's the pursuit of power, passion and style,
then prepare to be amazed. Introducing the brand new Peugeot 508, the perfect expression of everything that drives us to create cars that stir the soul. The new 508 brings elegance and engineering to a whole new level, with features like Peugeot's unique iCockpit interior, night vision, and adaptive cruise control. Test drive the amazing new 508 at your nearest Peugeot dealer. See Peugeot.ie for details.
The Sunday Papers on Off the Ball.
Now you're very welcome back to the Sunday Paper View this Sunday on Off the Ball. Marie Crowe and Jack Anderson are with me in studio. We've gone through all the rugby in the first half an hour of the paper review. A couple of really good GAA pieces. There was one I saw you mentioning this morning, Marie. It was an interview by Michael Foley in the Sunday Times with Eamon McGee, former Donegal defender Eamon McGee. It's ahead of Guido's All-Ireland club semi-final next week, but it's not really about it, is it? No.
It's not. And you know what I'd read, before I read this, I'd read pages and pages of analysis and reports on attendances and finance and ticket prices. And when I read this, I just thought everything that is really fundamentally important about the GAA is actually in this. That other stuff is just incidental, because what the GAA gives people and what the GAA is reflected in this piece. It's about community, values, support networks, friendships, all those kind of things. And this piece with Eamon McGee was just, it captures all of that, because it just kind of documents what has happened in Guidor. The death of Micheál Rourtree was on their team, and he was a friend as well as a teammate. And like the headline of it at the very top, he said, I was his biggest influence. You think, did you make enough of an effort with him when you had that influence? And straight away, you're just thinking about what that community are going through, the effect that's having on everybody up there, a really small place. But as you read it, then you kind of realise that something tragic has happened, but they have the GAA there to support them, and that means an awful lot. But it's just a beautiful piece, because like the easy thing to do is not talk about these things or not talk about these people, and they just become a number, like however number of people have died on the road. But Eamon McGee here, he makes us realise that Royce, as they call him, he's more than a number. He's a friend, he's a person, he's a brother, he's a teammate, and he just gives us that insight into the relationship they had, and how he was, like he said, he was an influence on him, how this young guy was growing up and he idolised McGee, and he also just shows us as well how difficult the whole the number of weeks have been on him. Just, he talks about going to the wake and not being able to look into the coffin to see his friend, and how he regretted that, and he made it his business to go back the next day and to go in and say goodbye. And just telling that, I think it's a real tribute to Royce, as he calls him.
Yeah,
and
I think
it's so important to say it.
Yeah. That paragraph in particular was probably the most chilling, the toughest to read, even about how he was at the wake and he couldn't look down at Micheál, and had to go back a day or so later before the funeral.
And it's very brave to say that as well, to give people that insight. But I think it's just really nice, because it lets us know him a little bit. Lets us know Micheál a little bit, because so often these people, we just forget about them. But now we get to see that he's more than a number.
Absolutely,
he was such an important person to so many people.
Yeah, and it's just right at the beginning, as you say, McGee talks about, well, you're there sitting in the dressing room in your usual place, chatting to each other, and then days roll by and there's a coffin in front of you, and it's an incredible piece about that, and about McGee's influence, and he kind of brushes it off. And then suddenly you realise, maybe I did have an influence, maybe I could have done more, and that self-reflection, and also the place the community has, and the awful tragedy involved in it, and all encapsulated in this piece, and a brilliantly written piece.
Yeah, and the importance of the GAA as well, and like he says that they've got a game now, and they're not going to try and it would be disrespectful to make it about him, but that they would like to help the family to just forget for a minute, just to kind of get caught up in the moment. And that's that GAA, that's everywhere, that's communities all over the country where it's more than just a game, that it's a way of life, that it's without it people can't survive, and that it's so important in times of tragedy that you can lean on the GAA, that you can go to your club, that you can go to your friends, that you can go to your training, that the parish, everything, your identity it's there, and it's wrapped up in the GAA as well.
Yeah, because you always get the cliche, the tightly knit community, and you kind of what is the fabric of that knitted community? Well, it's in a community like this, it's the GAA, and so that
probably 90% of the country, it is that local GAA club. Say 90% of rural communities.
And the other sports clubs as well, play hugely important. So that's the point. There's also, points in it about McGee himself as well, which I think is, he talks about Mickey Hart coming to visit the players as well. And at one stage it says, McGee's personal beliefs as an atheist with a passion for science, graphic novels, and an outlook that would leave him diametrically opposed to Hart in almost every way, yet there was some comfort in Hart Smith.
That was fascinating,
Well,
wasn't
it's
it?
an outstanding paragraph that gets in so much, and so I thought it was a great piece. And there's other parts to it as well, as being an inter-county player and the club and what these club championships mean. But obviously they're secondary to the key point to it. But a fantastic piece.
And I think after reading all the analysis on the recent drop in figures and the ticket prices and all that sometimes you forget about what the GAA is about. You're focused on the elite game, you're focused on whether football is good or bad at the moment, and you're focused on the negativity, and like this just strips it back and it just focuses on everything that's good about the GAA and what it gives people. And I just thought it was a real super piece, and it was just the perfect antidote to everything else, and just such a, again, I can't stress how brave Eamon McGee is to talk about this, because people generally don't let you, they don't give you quotes about their own doubts, how they're feeling, just the, wondering, was he enough of an influence on him? To even be able to say that, was just pretty astounding. And
as a journalist, how hard is it to write a piece like this when you've done the interview, you've spoken to someone, you probably have half an hour worth of absolutely chilling, heart-wrenching stuff on a tape recorder, and you're sitting there going, how do I lay this out?
Yeah, it's hard.
Because I would say there is a tons of pressure to treat it sensitively, to treat it correctly.
I did a piece with Kenny Shields after Ryan McBride died, and it was quite similar. And he wondered within the piece if perhaps they had trained a little bit too much that week, and he questioned things that he did as well. But with something like that, like when people open up like Eamon did or like Kenny Shields did, that they want the story out there. They want to talk. They want you to tell the story about the person that they've lost. And I think that makes it a little bit easier, because they've given you what you need. They've given you the words that they want you to say, and then you're able to just kind of weave that as best you can to pay tribute to to both of the people, to the person that has passed away and also the person that has given you these words and shared their thoughts with you as well. But it is difficult, and it is a pressure, but Michael Foley just did a wonderful job.
Yeah, it really is absolutely well worth reading this weekend, even if you've zero interest in Gaelic games whatsoever. I think it's about sport at the very root of it. It's about club, community, friendships. The fact even that he's saying from the time as a kid, McGee coached him in school. McGee was his superhero in Donegal costume. He wasn't in the first team squad, but leading into an All-Ireland semi-final, Gaoithir needed everyone pulling them forward in one direction. On Sunday, McGee Snapchatted him a link to a documentary, no reply, no panic. Then he saw the news, 4 men killed in a single vehicle crash in Donegal. When he saw his brother's name flash up on his phone that night, he knew.
Yeah, it was it was chilling, really. It was really chilling. And I said earlier today that the emotion in it is breathtaking, and it really is. And as you said, it's for everybody, whether you're interested in GAA. Again, there are actually quite a few layers to this as well. And it's funny, when I think of Eamon McGee, I don't ever really think of the vulnerabilities that we're seeing here. And he talks as well about how he had to, he retired and how difficult it was, and how he started to get a little bit down, and he had to reprogram himself and to change his identity, reprogram his identity, so that he wasn't just the footballer, and he was a dad and a professional. And I'd say there's an awful lot of people who will read that as well and relate to that. So again, for Eamon McGee to lay himself out there as well, it's fascinating.
Yeah, and even on the footballing side, there's a very interesting line. He says, when McGee was made captain in 2017 of the club, his first decision was to pass it on to one of the younger players as a message. This was their team to shape. Getting hammered in 2016 by Naomh Conaill in the county championship had left them bereft of hope or a plan. Beating them in the county final last year and stretching their ambitions to an Ulster title was a startling measure of their progression. Just the notion that, I imagine being named captain of your club is an incredible honour. In those small clubs as well, where it's just completely ingrained in life. And the idea that you're just going to say, you know what, I've had my day out here. It's
I'm not going to make this about me.
We're going to make this a team for the future and give it to a younger player.
It's. I think that's.
It's an interesting time of year for in GAA in terms of there's a lot of focus now on clubs, because you've got the senior club, intermediate, and junior, and you get stories. Obviously the story is of itself, but there are wider stories. This weekend St Enda's in Belfast.
Yeah, we were talking about that last week on the pay-per-view.
I played against them many times in hurling in Belfast, many times, and I just going in that gate and you see see what happened, and it's an incredible story. You get that, and there's also a very good piece I think in the Sunday Independent by Marie Crowe on Castle Blaney and hurling as well. And as someone, I ended up playing junior hurling, and we got to an All-Ireland junior hurling semi-final, and we lost, and I remember it was the biggest disappointment ever, because you miss out on that opportunity to get to Croke Park, and I think we criticise the GAA, and God knows there's plenty of criticism today in the papers, but they're fantastic competitions, those club competitions. I think it was Sean Kelly as president brought them in, and that vision is great, and you see it, there's in so many stories, and the insight it gives you, not just the GAA but Ireland as a whole.
And also you don't just focus on the players, because they're not the big stars that we know about, so we get to hear about the volunteers as well, and the people who are making the sandwiches and lining the pitch and washing the jerseys and all that sort of stuff as well. But one of the reasons that we do get to hear an awful lot about these kind of these club teams is because we don't have access to county players as much as we used to as well, so we kind of have to think outside the box and look for the stories that are unique and the ones that we don't that we wouldn't necessarily cover if we were on our usual beat, that we'd just be looking at the big stars and the big names and the big league matches, because we are in the middle of the league as well, and it's a really interesting league as well. So
and that probably leads into, you were writing this week, you have an interview in the Sunday Independent with Mark Plunkett of Leitrim.
Yes.
And even beforehand you were telling us you were sitting there last week going, who am I going to try speak to this week? And
I was looking through the fixtures. I was looking through the fixtures and looking at the counties, and I was thinking, okay, this county don't talk to people, this one has a media manager, I haven't a chance of getting an interview with anyone from this county. And then I just got as far as Leitrim, and I thought, you know what, now I'm going to try somebody from Leitrim, and I was looking for someone that was a little bit younger as well, that probably didn't have wasn't carrying any weight on his shoulders for maybe not having success for a long time. So a friend of mine put me in touch with Mark, and I sent him a text message, and then after I sent him the text message I got a phone call off a number that I didn't know, and when I answered it they hung up. So I figured there's something funny going on here. So when he eventually got back to me anyway, and we arranged to meet, and when I met him I said, were you worried that perhaps this was a bit of a setup? And he admitted that he was, because he said, I'm from Leitrim, nobody ever asked anybody from Leitrim to do an interview, and I've heard so many horror stories about people being set up for interviews and it was actually their friend at the other end of the phone, or somebody on the other end of the phone just playing a joke on them. So we had a bit of a chuckle about that. But Mark was great, and as he said, he'd never done an interview before, even though he's been on the intercounty team for a number of years. But he was quite refreshing, because he was open, and it wasn't at a press conference. He wanted to chat. We were having a coffee. When I went to meet him, I wasn't looking for any big headline. I just wanted a little bit of insight into Leitrim and what they're doing and how they're getting on and why they're doing well. And he gave me that. He mentioned that they had brought in Robert Morehouse to a business advisor to do some practical tasks with them, which was quite interesting, to do workshops with them. Things like where they're given a main structure, and they were told that you've got to put into teams and you've got to try and build this, and they were given a plan, and they were given 5 attempts to do it, and the first one, the average was 27 minutes, and by the time they'd got to the fifth attempt, they were down to 30 seconds. But it was about problem solving and just changing the mindset and being able to deal with things on the pitch. So he just gave me a bit of insight into Terry Hyland's setup without, without giving anything away or without saying something that's going to be pinned on anyone's dressing room. But another thing as well was that, I was quite interested in finding out, somebody who's playing for Leitrim, who doesn't have a big tradition of winning, a small county, what drives him, what motivates him. And it was quite fascinating. He's exactly the same as every other footballer around the country. They want to win things. He might not see Sam Maguire coming home with him anytime soon, but he'd love to win a Connacht title, get to a Connacht final. So he's got the same drive as everybody else. He's got the same commitment.
Yeah, and I think the very last quote in the entire piece probably sums that up. He says, for Leitrim to get to a Connacht final and repeat 1994, that will be incredible. Winning our first championship game will be a good place to start.
Yeah.
It just shows the kind of where a team is starting from.
5 in a row.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and again, it was just great for him to say that, because I'm sure that the Dublin footballers are doing their absolute best will be doing their absolute best for the rest of the year, not to mention the 5 in a row, but he's happy enough to say, wouldn't it be great now if we went out and won our first championship match, and we'll see after that if we got to a Connacht final. It was just super to hear him.
And it was interesting that he started, and you have the table in the thing as well. He started with Leitrim being top of the table in their division. But then he said, which is kind of, playing teams of our strength.
Yeah.
But then he says, well, I still... winning a provincial is what I want to do. So that's it's a trick for the GAA when they talk about tiering the championship. You've got to get that balance,
because people dream up or grow up dreaming of winning provincial titles as well, and sure, there's nothing in the world that would make him happier than winning it as well. And he was quite good as well on being in DCU, and when you're in DCU, you're surrounded by people who are coming from top class setups. You've got Mayo players and Dublin players, and it must be very hard for him to be sitting there in the dressing room and hearing them talk about what they have and the resources that they have, and having to sit in the car and go down to training knowing that you're going to be at a disadvantage straight away because you don't have the resources of the bigger counties as well.
When you mentioned there, going down training as well, a bit that stood out, and it's something I'd say you could substitute Leitrim for half the counties in the entire country. Playing for Leitrim requires a lot of commitment. They have 18 players living in Dublin, either in work or college. So to ease the pressure, their coach Jason O'Reilly does a Tuesday session at Blanchardstown IT for these players. Everyone has heard stories, not just of Leitrim. So many counties around the country, even bigger footballing counties and hurling counties.
Everyone talks about Mayo.
Have a huge contingent living outside their county, several hours away, and have to train apart for a couple of nights a week.
Yeah, I know, and it's funny because there's all this debate about at the moment about taking Dublin out of Croke Park. It's this big massive issue, but imagine if they had to 18 of them had to travel down somewhere that's 2 or 3 hours outside their county. I think you kind of don't even realise how hard it is until you talk to one of them, and they're talking about being in the car for 6-hour round trips, the effect that it has on the legs and the body and all that. It's so difficult, and the commitment, those guys in Leitrim are putting in just as much as anybody around the country as well.
There are other pieces as well. We spoke about how all the ticket increases and things like that are being put into perspective, but there are quite a few pieces on that.
And a lot of negativity. There's
a lot of negativity around it,
Yeah, I mean, even Eamon Sweeney on the back of the Sunday Independent talks about the Super 8s in Gaelic football being a failed experiment, and I must admit, I really like Eamon Sweeney and Eamon Sweeney's pieces, but sometimes you go, well, what do you want then? In the sense that, and it's a bit like the rules experiment, well, we try these now, what do you want? So there is that. I must admit, last night, and we were talking about it, the game between Kerry and Dublin, which is reported on as well, was a fantastic game.
It was,
and a high scoring game, 118 to 214. Mind you, I contrasted the Kerry Dublin 118 to 214 with Fermanagh and Kildare was 8 points to 6 down, and Westmeath was 10 points to 9. So between them, they scored less.
Unfortunately, it's the Dublin Kerry one is the anomaly there. It's not the regular. It's the exception to the rule, which is such a pity.
In fairness, though, with the negativity all around it, it's probably worth just taking these little victories for the game when they come.
Totally. I tweeted last night, I think that was the game we all deserved, because we've been subjected to all these low-scoring battles of attrition for so long that it was just it was super to see it.
But we're talking there about, the Eamon Sweeney saying the Super 8s is a failed experiment. On the other hand, then, you look at what went on last night and you're thinking, should this not be happening in the summer?
It's a good point.
The best teams playing each other.
Well, Kieran Whelan, who was commentating afterwards, said that immediately, And I mean, if you think of it, they're two evenly matched teams at a provincial ground, packed out on a Saturday evening. There's a lot to like about it. But, in fairness to Pádraig Duffy with the Super 8s as well, he did say it was an experiment. He did say, we'll bring it in for 3 years and let's see how it goes, And I remember after the first round of matches last year, people were going, that's it has to go. I mean, so you wonder at times, let's think about these things, because for the sake of Leitrim players who want something to aim at, we've got to get this right, and the tier championship. But there are, even with the pieces today, there's a lot of pieces on the ticketing issue as well. Michael Dignan in the Mail and Dennis Walsh has a few pieces as well.
It's not going away.
No, it's not. The immediate reaction is you shouldn't have done it. You ought not to have done it. And that seems to be the gist on it as well. The one point that is made by, I think it's Dennis Walsh makes it in his piece. He does,
I have it here.
He mentions about in the 70s they did a major review called the McNamee Review. And I do think that kind of a long-term strategic thing needs to be done with the GAA in this. We're all very reactive now. But we need to kind of sit down and think about where we're going. I think last year they did a thing, 150th anniversary, where will the GAA be? But they didn't publish it. So I think that's a good point as well, that the 24/7 hour news cycle is not doing the GAA any favours, and it needs to kind of look at this in a long-term perspective.
Because it does seem to be kind of going from one crisis to the next crisis, and the negativity just keeps building, and it's just constant week after week.
If it's not structures, it's rules, it's Porky Queeve, it's ticket prices.
And like the thing about the hurling was, when the hurling is really good, it kind of took away from some of the negativity. But like this Kerry game, it's not every week. We're not having these great games all the time, so we don't even have that. The exciting action to kind of distract from the negativity. So because the action isn't always exciting every week, we're still focused on the things that are going wrong or the things that we have a problem with.
Yeah, and even just on the occasion of last night, I actually thought Michael Foley, his opening paragraph was lovely, just setting the scene of it. He says, they were filling Stacks Park before tea time in their hundreds, then their thousands, into the seats and terraces, and finally on the grassy banks where no one was meant to stand. Nearly an hour and a half before the game, and Liam O'Connor could rouse up a stand almost full with the accordion playing of Sliabh Lucra, and by the time Kerry emerged, the night had already taken on an energy of its own. The only worry was that the football could drag the atmosphere down. Luckily it didn't.
Definitely, I think the home and away and our venues are great. I went up to Tyrone last year when the Dubs were playing, and it was just a really good day out, and it wasn't a bad game either. Like it wasn't as good as that, but it was brilliant. It was brilliant for the atmosphere and the excitement that comes when the big teams go on tour. So, like it kind of, when games are in venues like that where it is all exciting. It does distract if the game isn't good, but it also kind of adds to the game, because that game down in that Mayo Kerry game down in Limerick, like that was
2014.
That was one of the best games I was ever at in my life. It was just amazing. I don't even remember like how good the game was, but I just remember how I felt when I was there. Like it was just everything about it was brilliant, and everybody was so close in on the pitch. So I think kind of staying away from Croke Park is a good way to go anyway for a start.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Moving on, there was a League of Ireland season is coming up ahead of us, and Marie, one thing you said, you mightn't have realised it going off today's papers.
Yeah, it's a little
Not
bit
too
of
much coverage.
No, it's a little bit of a pity. There is a piece about Sean Ryan in the Sunday Endo, but that's kind of very much focused on the money side of things. And I don't think that kind of captures the imagination. For me, over the last couple of years, because the access to GAA players has got quite difficult, I have focused on the League of Ireland quite a bit in terms of getting stories and going for interviews, because it's great, because they want to talk to you and they want to they want to give you their time. So there is one really good piece in the Daily Mail. Like, I just need to point out as well, like the League of Ireland is starting on Friday. So like Sundays generally when there's a big feature, a big interview with somebody looking ahead to it's like the perfect opportune time to let's pick a person here now and delve into their backgrounds because there are so many good stories. So like I've been aware of Conan as a footballer with St. Pat's, and also his media work. So he is a big personality. But I wasn't aware of what was going on in the background. Like I've met him at quite a few things.
This is Conan Byrne,
over the last while, and it was just really interesting. David had tweeted about it last night.
David Snade, he's talked to.
He had tweeted about it last night, and I knew there was something interesting coming, and it certainly was. So Conan has gone through a tough time. His wife was sick, and she actually had a stroke, and all the time he was trying to keep his whole life going, to keep his football going, to keep his studies going, to keep his job going, to just kind of keep.
Because even aside from being a footballer for St. Pat's and now Shelbourne for this season, he's a primary school teacher.
Yeah. And like that, I actually thought that was really interesting bit, because like, I suppose like nobody really knows how much League of Ireland footballers get paid, because there's just the league can be a little bit murky at times, that you hear stories but no one's actually sure. Like you wouldn't be able to put an average wage on anyone, but he talks about the struggles here of trying to save to buy a home and provide for his family and how important that was, and he went back to education. And like Conan was worried when he was back in education that it was a distraction from football, and he didn't want people to think that he was being distracted by education. And like you think that if somebody is furthering their education and doing something great, that it wouldn't be an issue, or that he would be supportive. But obviously in his own mind he wanted to be able to focus on the football. But I think it kind of is this piece by David, just it's kind of an insight into the difficulties that come as well with football, like in Ireland, because so many people grow up wanting to be a footballer, and so little people make it, as we all know. Like the figures are tiny, and they often go into the League of Ireland, and it's not as glamorous as you would think it would be, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, there's and it comes back to the Sean Ryan piece as well in the Sunday Independent. I mean, there is this kind of idea that if Brexit is ever realised, the number of Irish players going to England will decrease, and that should be good for the game. That depends on the game's capacity to
actually house them.
So and that's why Sean Ryan's piece is really interesting, because he's saying the financial model of a lot of the clubs is based on individuals, philanthropic, kind of grants to those clubs and bailing them out, and talks about Derry and Bray and even to a certain extent Dundalk as well. And that's why it's interesting in what Niall Quinn is saying about reforming it as well. I mean, there's a lot of models. I know even in Australia they have a kind of a franchising model, which is essentially you centralise things. And that may be something to go on, but it's a story that will go on, and that's why individual stories like we have in the Mail
Conan here,
really gives you an insight into actually beyond the financial model what's happening on the ground.
And also like players' futures, they need to safeguard them. The league needs to be safeguarded for the future, but also players themselves. And like somebody like Conan, who is so successful and is a leading light in the league, to hear him talk about his struggles, I thought it was very revealing.
And as he points out as well, like he's a player who has been through a failing club. He says he had previously maybe thought about further education or his life after football. But he was at Sporting Fingal and everything was going well, and it was all fantastic, and he was thinking, I'm going to be here forever. This is all going to be fine. And less than a year later the club went to the wall.
Exactly.
And every footballer in the League of Ireland has a story like that. They've all had ups and downs, and been insecure and unsure of their futures as well. It's a really tough existence.
And even on I suppose a lighter note, he's talking about a few years ago going back and deciding he's going to be a primary school teacher. It's something he thought about in school but didn't get the points to do it. And, at the age of, in his early 30s, having to go off to the Gaeltacht for a few weeks, being surrounded by kids who could speak more Irish than he could.
Away from the dressing room, one far into the other, I'd say as well.
Absolutely.
Like people who speak out about these things, I think they're great, because it's so important to hear these stories and to hear about people's backgrounds and the struggles that they're going through, because other people might be going through the same things and don't feel comfortable talking about them. And like that's the issue that I have with the lack of access to GAA players. You're losing all of that information and experiences, and it's the people that are coming up, the next generation then are missing out as well, and the fans are missing out as well, because anyone that will read this will, they'll know Conan a little bit better now after it as well, I think, which is nice.
Yeah, I've spoken to him as well before. Just a very nice guy, very interesting guy. He's spoken a lot, is very into his history.
Yeah.
Very, very big into Irish history, and loves talking about that as well. But player I'm sure we'll hear a lot from further down the line. Any other pieces as well so far?
Just
you mentioned Emiliano Sala. Actually.
Yeah, you contrast that. There's a big piece, I think it's an Observer piece that is published in the Sunday Independent as well by Daniel Taylor on the whole, the tragedy that was Emilio Sala's death, and he's basically making the point that the poor man's body is being taken out of the plane, the wreckage of the plane, and there is a legal dispute about
the
money,
transfer fee.
about the transfer between Cardiff and Nantes. And it's about that primarily, but it's also gives an insight into professional football as well, particularly agents. And I think there's about 5 agents involved in this whole deal, and so there's an element of that as well. And he talks about the agent. There's one agent in particular that he talks about, and the agent happily admitted that he had planted misinformation in the media about Everton and West Ham wanting to sign Salah, and it just gives an insight into the practices of it, because a number of years back, FIFA decided not to regulate agents anymore. Basically, let it go and let individual nations deal with it. And it's a problem for so many sports, football, even sports like tennis as well. But it gives a really interesting insight into agents. It also gives an interesting insight into Nantes themselves and the financial troubles they have in the background there as well. But ultimately, he asks the person in question, and Cardiff get a bit of a go as well for what they're doing as well. But he asked the question, is football still capable of doing the decent thing? Which in this case is not talking about it, respecting the family and respecting what's going on, and deal with the rest of the issues later.
I suppose the reality of it was that, there was always going to be complications, there was always going to be issues, something was going to come down the track. And he asked, but this quickly, did it really have to be this way? And that's, I think he nails it there. They hadn't even got the body out of the water.
They were still searching for the body while this was going
money
on.
came to the surface. And
there's a pilot still missing.
Then nobody's thinking about that. Well, nobody there that he mentions anyway, when it comes to the agents, are thinking about that. And it's really sad. And I suppose as well, we don't hear these stories that much. We hear about guys from Ireland going to England, not making it, coming back, having to be rehabilitated, going through a really tough time. And often when interviewing these people, they might refer to having a bad agent or their agent not having their best interest at heart, but they never really divulge what that means. But I think reading that, you'd have a fair idea about where the agent's priorities lie.
Absolutely,
Yeah, and the things then, Nantes have retired their number 9 shirt and offered to pay for Salah's body to be flown to Argentina, but we're still bickering over a transfer fee. A week or so on from him going missing.
And at one stage he gives, I think they've had 14 managers in 11 years, Nantes, and they've had payoffs to all those managers, and so there's a commercial thing going on in the background. It's
a story filled with contradictions.
Absolutely.
And you have to wonder what's genuine as well and what's for optics.
Absolutely, and he makes that point very well.
Anything else so far today? A couple of racing pieces?
Yeah, there's a racing piece. David Walsh has a piece at the back of the Sunday Times on a major scandal in Australian racing, where the leading horse trainer,
our Australian correspondent,
live from Australia, has been banned for 4 years for various offences in terms of racing integrity. The standout piece is that he used what are called jiggers, which is essentially electric shock treatment to the horses themselves. The one thing about, and David Walsh mentions that as well, is when we talk about integrity in horse racing and these kind of issues about our horses being stopped and is there a gambling scam, one of the things that's picked up big time in Australia is the animal welfare issue. That these horses are being badly treated for gambling purposes. And I know from talking to the racing integrity people in Australia, that is the issue that gets the general public involved outside of the horse racing. And David Walsh makes that point in that. And I know Irish horse racing and UK horse racing are very aware of that. So there's an extra element to this, not just the gambling as well.
Yeah, I think the fact is that he is as high profile really as you can get in Australia in terms of racing.
He's the leading horse trainer and has been for the last number of years. He kind of he exploded in terms of winning numbers. He won the 2015 Melbourne Cup on a complete outsider with Michelle Payne was the jockey in question. I think the horse in second was an Irish horse actually. There's no question that there's any doubts about that, but it does show the importance of it. Now the one thing I will say is they raided that training facility, the horse racing integrity unit, with the police. They work hand in hand with the police. And there is tight regulation of gambling in Australia. We have none of that in Ireland. Horse racing has to do it on its own. And that's the point. The regulation of gambling in Ireland is atrocious at a central level, and the sports are battling to deal with it. So that's an underlying point.
So we've obviously covered that story in Ireland, and it has featured regularly in the news. Is it absolutely massive over in Australia?
The numbers involved, the betting industry is huge. Australians are, and I like to tell them this all the time, they're the biggest losers per capita when it comes to gambling. They bet so much they lose a lot.
Wow.
But the reason they are is they use these pokey machines.
Yeah.
Second is Singapore. They use it's casino. We're third. And we're pure sporting in a sense. So this gambling addiction issue, this lack of gambling regulation, I think it's a public health issue in Ireland that we haven't dealt with really. There's a gambling bill that's taken ages to go through the Oireachtas at the minute, but we need to get that done because this is an issue. And we've seen it with GAA players, we've seen it with players all over the place, and with online gambling, it's a serious issue.
Yeah, there's some absolute horror stories out there
Absolutely.
about players being addicted to gambling, or I've heard a few times about lads walking into dressing rooms and everyone just been on the phones at half time just checking odds and betting and running and everything. It's worrying, and unfortunately we have the head in the sand kind of attitude towards it.
Totally, because we like a bet, we do, and that's it, but we need regulation on it. Our regulation goes back to the 50s, and it's amazing that we haven't had it, and it's not the betting companies that are holding it up, we just don't know what the political reticence is to get this done.
Okay, guys, I know there was one more piece that you wanted to mention about trainer Pat Kelly. He's the trainer of Presenting Percy, who's the favourite for the Gold Cup this year. Really enjoyable piece. We're actually just running out of time very quickly, though. Marie, you enjoyed it. What was it you liked about it?
I did. Just there's a lot of humour in it because he doesn't like talking to the media. It's almost become a little bit of a joke. So Dennis Walsh spoke to a few people that know him, and just to try and get a little bit of a feel for the type of guy he is and why he doesn't like talking to the media. And he has a quote there included in the piece from Davy Russell. Well, not only is Pat the sort to tell me nothing, he tells himself nothing too. So I thought that kind of summed it up very well.
So guys, that is it. Thank you to Marie for coming in, and thanks to Jack for joining us all the way from Melbourne. Safe trip. And when are you going back to?
Later next week. A few things to do here, but later next week.
A few things to check out. Anyway, that's it for the pay-per-view for now on all of our social channels. It's going to be podcast as well later on today. We'll be back after the break.
Off the Ball on News Talk.
If she was down my back garden, I'd be like, hi Beyonce, I'm just going in here for a chicken sandwich. Hope you don't mind.
That's Brexit, and that's the problem. That guy is just thinking, I want to get some bananas. Where? Up a mountain. Where? I don't care. Tesco's, whatever.
Two bad boy cops, Banger and Mash, have messed with the wrong Asian country.
How much danger is the Queen in if there's Brexit riots? That's, granted she lives on an estate that can be dodgy at the best of times.
Hear the full You Couldn't Make It Up podcast
at newstalk.com and on the Newstalk app.
in partnership with Tesco.
Your vehicle's tyres play a vital role in your safety on the road. Ensure your tyres are roadworthy, inflated to the correct pressure, and are of a minimum tread depth for use on public roads. Motor Tips, brought to you by Volkswagen Service. Book a service online at volkswagen.ie.
Wondering if alcohol is affecting your health, weight, or wallet? Find out using the drinks calculator at askaboutalcohol.ie from the HSE.
Are you looking to advance your career options with a recognised project management qualification? The Institute of Project Management has set the standard in project management education and certification for over 25 years. Our certified diploma programs provide access to level 8 and 9 qualifications and globally recognised IPMA certification. Enhance your project management skills, acquire recognised qualifications and move your career forward with the Institute's guidance and expertise. Contact the Institute at projectmanagement.ie.
Hi, I'm Sue and I'm a Foot Solutions customer. Following years of niggly injuries in my legs, hips and back, I tried Brooks runners from Foot Solutions and have never looked back. I like to run, so I needed quality runners. Instead of buying online and wasting time with poor fitting and returns, I got an expert fitting consultation in Foot Solutions for my Brooks runners and customised arch supports.
If you walk, jog or run, step into the perfect fit at Foot Solutions or visit footsolutions.ie.
With Virgin Media, you can build up the entertainment and tear down the price. First up, movies. Sport. Gaming. You win. And to top it off, switch today and get superfast broadband and TV for just €49 a month for an awesome 12 months. The sale that stacks up. Now on. See virginmedia.ie.
T's and C's apply. See virginmedia.ie. 12-month contract. Offer ends 27th of February 2019.
For when life feels a little squeezed, Ulster Bank has a wide range of low mortgage rates that could really help. For when you're moving house to get more space or switching your mortgage to get more breathing room. See what you could save. Search Ulster Bank Switch or Move. Ulster Bank. Help for what matters. Warning, if you do not keep up repayments, you may lose your home. Warning, if you do not meet the repayments on your loan, your account will go into arrears. This may affect your credit rating, which may limit your ability to access credit in the future. Maximum loan to value is 90%. Security and insurance required. Product fees may apply. Over 18s and residential mortgages only. Lending criteria, terms and conditions apply. Credit facilities subject to repayment capacity and financial status. Ulster Bank Ireland DAC is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
Having a flutter? Top tip, quinbet.com. Ireland's newest online sportsbook and casino. For all your horse racing, football, casino and more, QuinBet has you covered. With live in-play markets on mobile, PC and app. QuinBet.com. Terms and conditions apply. Gamble responsibly. Visit gambleaware.ie.
At Energia, we're the power behind all of Ireland's streetlights. And we're also the power behind the lights closer to home. From the night light beside the baby's cot to the big light in the hall. There's now big savings to be made by switching to Energia and Ireland's cheapest dual-fuel bundle. Switch today at energia.ie or call 1850 300 700. Energia, the power behind your savings. EAB €1,470 based on average annual usage. 12-month contract, discounted unit rates, standing charge, PSO levy and carbon tax, T's and C's and early termination fee apply. Valid from January 2019 and subject to change. Verification and T's and C's at energia.ie/EAB.
Dreaming of a sunny beach break? Fly Air Arabia direct to Agadir, Morocco's premier sun destination. Flights from Dublin start at €59 one way, including taxes. Book at airarabia.com. Air Arabia. Where next? T's and C's apply.
The outcome of Brexit may not be certain, but one thing is clear. Your business could face serious challenges. Enterprise Ireland can help your business respond to the risks and opportunities which Brexit presents. Plan, innovate, compete and diversify with our wide range of supports. Start taking action now. Speak to your Enterprise Ireland Development Advisor or visit prepareforbrexit.ie, an initiative of the Government of Ireland.
At AppliancesDelivered.ie, we're offering free delivery on everything. That's right, all this weekend we're offering free delivery on all appliances. You're welcome. AppliancesDelivered.ie.
Off the ball. This is News Talk.
You're very welcome back to this Sunday's Off the Ball. Neil Tracy with you until 6 o'clock on News Talk. We have a Premier League game coming up at 4 o'clock. It's Manchester City against Chelsea. City hoping to go back to the top of the Premier League after Liverpool's 3-0 win yesterday. Nathan Murphy and Brian Kerr are going to be at the Etihad Stadium for the 4 o'clock kickoff. Team news still just under 15 minutes away, but I believe we can cross over now to the Etihad Stadium to speak to Nathan Murphy, who's in place. Nathan, how are you doing?
Hey Neil, how's things?
Not too bad at all, Nathan. So after yesterday's win for Liverpool, pressure back onto Manchester City, a win, and they go back to the top this afternoon.
Yeah, I always felt as though this was going to be a huge week for Manchester City, and they've passed the test with flying colours so far, with the victories against Arsenal last Sunday and then against Everton in midweek. Workman-like performances, I would say. It still doesn't feel as though City are firing on all cylinders, mainly down to the lack of form and fitness, I feel, of Kevin De Bruyne and David Silva. They're getting the job done. The fact that probably Fernandinho has been their best midfielder in recent weeks says a lot about where Manchester City are right now, but they've been very, very professional over the past week. You just look at the times they've scored their goals over the past week. That game against Arsenal last week, Arsenal had a huge amount of momentum in that first half, and then City struck just before half time. And again in midweek against Everton, getting the goal right at the end of the first half, deep into injury time, and at the end of the game as well. They're very, very professional in what they do. They don't give up. They take advantage of any little slip from the opposition at all. And yeah, they have a good chance to go back on top of the Premier League table today. They've been pretty much flawless at home all season, with the exception of the defeat to Crystal Palace. They've won every other game, and they've scored at least 2 goals in every single home game this season in the Premier League. So that puts it up to any away team. If you're coming here thinking, we got to get 3 to win, it probably does something to your mindset heading into the match. Chelsea, for their part, they've got a good record against City recently. They beat them earlier in the season in a strange game, in that probably for the first 44 minutes it was one of City's best performances of the season, and an absolute smash and grab from Chelsea to win that game. They've been unbelievably inconsistent. Their last 2 games sum it up: beaten 4-0 by Bournemouth, and then they followed up with a 5-0 win over Huddersfield. It's probably an interesting time, I think, for both teams, Neil, in that they are fighting on several fronts. City on 4 fronts, and so too are Manchester City, or so too are Chelsea. So after this, they both have FA Cup games, Europa League games, and then they meet in the League Cup final before they get back into Premier League action in a couple of weeks' time. So with that long gap before the next Premier League game, this does feel as though it's a big, big match for both sides, for City in the title race, and of course for Chelsea as they try and get back above Manchester United in the race for the top 4.
Lovely stuff, Nathan. We'll be back with you just after 3 o'clock for the team news at the Etihad Stadium. That is for Manchester City against Chelsea, our live game at 4 o'clock here on Off the Ball. Now, just to remind you as well, Coca-Cola are the new soft drink partner of the Premier League. You can check out their great new ad on our Twitter and Instagram pages at Off the Ball. To celebrate, we'll be giving away tickets to Premier League games of your choice later this month. So make sure to listen out to Off the Ball across the next few weeks to be in with a chance to win. There is one game going on at the moment, just over an hour played at Wembley between Spurs and Leicester City. Spurs 1-0 up in that game. Davinson Sanchez with the only goal so far, just over 33 minutes into the match. A win for Spurs, and they'll stay third. They'll close within 5 points of leaders Liverpool, 2 points of Manchester City at the moment, and they'll also go back to 9 points clear of Manchester United, who are in 4th place. Now, a lot else going on today aside from Premier League and rugby as well. 3 o'clock, England host France in the Six Nations. There is also a lot of Gaelic Games action on at the moment. It's half-time in a lot of those matches in Division 1 of the Allianz Football League. Roscommon, 10 points to 4 in front against Tyrone at Dr. Hyde Park. Tyrone staring down the barrel of a 3rd straight defeat so far, and leaving themselves in a desperate relegation fight at the moment as well. Monaghan, 5 points to 4 in front against Galway at Inniskeen. Those two sides with 1 win apiece from their opening 2 matches. It's half-time in the Division 2 games between Clare and Cork at Cusack Park. That looks like a great game so far. Clare 2-6 to 6 points in front. I read that wrong initially. I thought it was 2-6 to 2-6. But yeah, Clare 2-6, Cork 6 points at half-time at Cusack Park. Meath are 1-9 to 3 points in front against Armagh Park Charlton. It is currently Donegal 10 points, Tipperary 4. That's half-time at Semple Stadium. In Division 3, the latest score half-time in Netwatch Cullen Park. Carlow and Longford 5 points apiece. It's Offaly 2-5, Louth 1-3 at O'Connor Park in Tullamore. And Laois are 9 points to 6 in front against Sligo at O'Moore Park. Also, full-time result in Division 4, the 3rd round of games. Derry are 3 wins out of 3. They have beaten Waterford by 2-13 to 6 points. The other 3 games are at half-time. Leitrim, 2 wins out of 2 so far. They do trail at half-time, though, against Antrim, 1-6 to 6 points. Another team who have 100% record, Limerick, they're also behind against Wicklow, 6 points to 3. And it's Wexford, 6 points. London, 5 points. Now, as I mentioned as well, there is a Six Nations game at 3 o'clock. England can make it 2 wins out of 2 and overtake Wales at the top of the table so far. They are taking on France in Le Crunch. France making tons of changes to their side after last week's disappointing defeat against Wales in Paris. Ireland, though, yesterday they had a 22-13 win against Scotland at Murrayfield. Jacob Stockdale was among those try scorers, and after what was a nip and tuck affair at Murrayfield, here's what Joe Schmidt had to say on the power play, one of his great power plays that unlocked the door for Jacob Stockdale's try yesterday afternoon.
Yeah, no, we haven't used it before. We felt that they would, if we got it into Pete's hands, that they would feel that we're just going to carry around the corner, and for Johnny to come back and strike that side of the ruck, we thought might be an opportunity. You can never say for certain that they're going to be opportunities. Mostly we would strike on the other side of the ruck, certainly in some of the plays that we play and they've played since. So we thought that it might be an opportunity, and no better man to get it in his hands than Jacob. I thought he looked quick and strong today. He created the opportunity for us to get the first try as well, with a nice little chip ahead that bounced kind of for them, but in trying to get the pass away, it went awry for them, and we got a little bit lucky, just like we got unlucky last week with Jacob losing that ball and Elliot Daly profiting from it.
Yeah, that was Joe Schmidt speaking after yesterday's game. Rory Best also spoke. He says last week's defeat to England did put pressure on, but he was pleased with the manner of how the team bounced back.
It was a different kind of pressure, but I think we're back now to the pressure that we put on ourselves to perform, and I think we'd ideally like to play better. We'd like to play with a little bit more fluidity than we did today. Get on the front foot a little bit more, and they defensively they came off the line very, very hard at us, and they were very hard at the breakdown. It was hard to get any kind of flow to the game for us. So yeah, look, we'll go back to I suppose the pressure that, like I said, we put on ourselves, the coaches put on us, and like we want to be better. I think last week was a strange week because we felt that we'd done all right in some areas, but then and been poor in others, and a couple of silly mistakes. But we don't strive for all right, we strive for the best we can be, and last week wasn't it, and I think we probably mentally and emotionally took a bigger step forward this week.
There's been a second goal at Wembley. Tottenham are 2-0 up now on Leicester City. Christian Eriksen came off the bench to score that goal. Leicester could have actually made it 1-1 earlier on. Jamie Vardy's missed a penalty, but there's 24 minutes left on that game now. Spurs are 2-0 up. As I say, Manchester City and Chelsea is coming up at 4 o'clock with Nathan Murphy and Brian Kerr. After the break and the news, though, we're going to have Fiona Steed on the line to look back on the weekend's rugby. Don't go away.
Get up-to-the-minute news updates at newstalk.com and on the Newstalk app.
There's only one thought that comes to mind when you first see the all-new Lexus ES, and that's bold elegance. It perfectly captures what this luxury saloon represents. Brave design meets supreme comfort, powered by our self-charging hybrid technology and enhanced by cutting-edge Lexus Safety System Plus, making the new ES ready for the future. You see, bold elegance. Nothing is crafted like a Lexus. Test drive the all-new ES and our range of self-charging hybrid saloons at your Lexus retailer, where you can choose from a range of flexible repayment options. Lexus. Experience